always type in the chat. It's always nice to see some sentences that resonates with people. So without further ado, I would like to bring Melanie to the floor. Melanie is the founding CEO of Unorthodox. And thank you for being with us for the session today, Melanie. The floor is
Great.
yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Welcome to everyone who's here. I appreciate really that your time is one of the biggest resources that you have, and the fact that you've chosen to spend it with us this afternoon for this topic is really, really special. So what I invite you to do is if you're sitting, make sure you're comfortable. I've actually just taken my shoes off so that I can be a little bit more grounded. Make sure that your body's relaxed. If you're connected to your lounge, your feet, your seats, drop your shoulders down, and really just drop into being here. I like to close my eyes and make sure my feet are actually connected to the ground, so that I can be present. And it's actually one of the interesting things when we were thinking about co-designing this webinar together with the panelists, with Lua, Ashish, Anka, Lindsay. 20 years ago, when I started doing this work in co-creation, across sectoral work, different kinds of knowledges, we didn't have this language or this conversation around embodiment, around regeneration. It was a very intellectual kind of conversation from the point of view that I came from. And it's so heartening to see it have moved in this direction. But what we still see a lot of the time is that a lot of people asked us, what does this mean? This idea to embody, to live, exist in regeneration, to move beyond the intellectual into the spirit, into the body. And what does this mean for the kinds of processes you design, the kinds of structures that work, the kind of collaborations that happen? And so that's where we've landed with this conversation this afternoon. So I'm hoping to create a flow with the panelists here. So we're in conversation with each other. And then, as was mentioned, we'll leave some space for answering questions that come through in the chat box. They will give you a little bit more detail, but this came through a process of creating a thing that's been called the Anthology of Regeneration. And it was a process that began somewhere, thinking about creating kind of like a state of knowledge of the idea of regeneration. And through the leadership of Lua, through the engagement of Ashish, through the work with Anka and Lindsay, and many, many other people who are not here, and we thank them for their contributions, it became something else, something entirely of the moment, entirely of the people creating it. And it represents a different kind of output because it was a different kind of process. And that is part of what we will describe as well. So these are four perspectives of this process. So I don't expect these panelists to represent everyone who was involved in the process of the anthology, but this is their first person experience, their life experience, their journey, and what they're going to offer. And so let's engage with curiosity, let's engage with respect, and let's hear what the full richness of their process has brought them for learning. So what I would like to do is get the panelists to introduce themselves briefly. So Lua, would you like to introduce yourself first? And then Ashish, I will go to you.
Okay, thank you for organizing hold space for this this experience here together with everyone. I'm Lua. I speak from Belém. It's my hometown. It's very north of Brazil, Amazonia. I research regenerative narratives. There are these stories that can put us in contact with parts of wisdoms and knowledge that were erased during the colonization process. This is how I see and how I paraphrase that. But I'm very happy to be here. I co-led this anthology together with Nisha Maripalus, that is a woman from India, that is that became a very close friend. And I'm very happy to share this space with Ashish, with Anka, and all the Unorthodox team that were together with us in this journey.
Great,
Ashish.
thank you, Lua.
So I go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Ashish. I live in the northern part of India in the Himalayas. I've been living here for over a decade in a rural community, and I've been working with the local children for many years. And my main objective has been to connect them with the traditional knowledge systems. That work, which I did before COVID, kind of led me to designing various experiences that were centered around regeneration. And then I eventually ended up joining Greater Than, which is a collective based in Europe, which has now become common ground. And at this moment, I would say that my work mainly lies at the intersection of inner and outer um, landscape understanding. Like when we do the work outside, what is the impact of that inside us, and how does our internal state of being kind of impact how we operate outside? So yeah, I'm very happy to be here along with Lua, Lindsay, and Anka and Melanie. And yeah, I'm excited to dive deeper into this conversation.
Thank you, Ashish. Lindsay, do you want to introduce yourself and then we will go to Anka?
Absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever we find you today. It's lovely to meet you. I'm Lindsay Elliott, and at the time of this work together, I was a consultant for Unorthodox and a witness to the process that became the anthology that's online now, and I'm so glad it's out to the world. My background was in science originally, tropical forestry, but I've definitely gravitated towards the social sciences and did my PhD on finding ways to enable collaboration in practice. And I'm now working at the Cambridge Conservation Initiative as Grants and Inclusion Manager. And it's really lovely to be on this gorgeous panel and to see you all again. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion today.
Anka?
Hi everyone, and I show up today quite raw, very emotional to be at this moment in time with everyone in the room. It's been a long journey, and I would like to say hi to everyone. Welcome. My name is Anka Damro. I'm the Director of Innovation at Unorthodox, but I describe myself as a mother of two energetic little boys, a partner, a systems thinker, a gentle disruptor. And my work is about designing and stewarding spaces where different types of knowledge can encounter one another. Over the years, I have worked across many collaborative and co-creative processes across conservation, biodiversity, socio-ecological systems, system change on a number of continents. I've been working with intergovernmental institutions, with the business sectors, with the not-for-profit. And I have to say that this anthology has been one of the most demanding and transformative processes I have been part of. It asked for a depth of epistemological plurality I had not encountered in quite this way before. I think in my foreword I said, welcome to the middle, the place where everything begins to shift. And the middle is where I felt that the anthology had worked on me, between the knowing and the unknowing, between holding and allowing myself to surrender to the process. So today I'm coming still with a learning hat. I come to this conversation from that middle. You will see that my answers are not perfect, but I come with humility and gratitude for having experienced this process and having allowed myself to understand regeneration. And I will probably stop there, and I will hand over back to Melanie.
Great. Thank you, Anka. And there is space here for all of these things, for the emotional, for the feeling, for the physical, for the intellectual, and however they come out in the conversations. So what I would invite our panelists to do, and I think I will begin with you, Ashish. The first kind of kickoff to our dialogue I would like to offer is a question that asks you to reflect on what kind of gift, growth, or transformation did you experience through this process for yourself? If you want to reflect on one or two things there.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. So for me, I was mainly contributing to the chapter on pluriverse and persistent harmful actions. And I would say that diving very deep into the state of regeneration for many different communities, what I kind of realized was that um, a quality which I would consider as regenerative for one community may not be regenerative for the other. So that kind of brought me face to face with the possibility of pluriverse. Like, for example, when I was doing diving deeper into Tibetan community, like before 1959, when they were uh, kind of in their Tibetan region, and after that, when they came to India, like mainly because I live in Bir and the community here. They have a settlement in Bir as well. So one of the qualities for regeneration that I identified from for them was tolerance. While when I was actually diving deeper into one Gujar community, which is in the northern belt of the Himalayas, adaptability was something at the core for them. So I was like, it's like the qualities of regeneration, the principles themselves are very different for different communities. So that was something that kind of helped me to really grow within myself. Another one was related to persistent harmful actions. Like for me, um, even though I was actually looking at the communities where these harmful actions were being done persistently, I was also trying to feel them inside me, and I was trying to see that like how do they actually, what kind of sensations or emotions they give rise to within the bodies when we feel them inside here. And that was a gift to me, like to basically uh, if I can say just 0.1% feel those persistent harmful actions inside me. That was something that I went through. Yeah, I'll pause here.
And I just want to build on that. So in terms of this idea of bringing in the feeling component to this, how did this influence the way you sought to interpret or engage with these different ideas of the knowledges, the different kinds of pluriverse? How did that go on a journey for you? Was that surprising? Was it something you intentionally set out to do, or did that kind of catch you off guard a little bit?
Yeah, I think I would say that I intentionally set out to do that. And how did that inform my research was that, like in my first point, what I highlighted was the multiple perspectives on regeneration. So when I started experiencing or feeling these perspectives within myself, that feeling, that those sensations actually told me whether those principles were regenerative or not. So kind of these principles that I'm talking about, for example, tolerance or adaptability, they actually emerged from within while I was experiencing or trying to tune myself into the existence of these communities. So I would say that for me, this was like inner and outer dialogue that continued to happen.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really interesting that you set out to do that at the beginning, that you acknowledged that that emotional sensing would be part of working between different kinds of knowledge systems, different kinds of tensions. And when you encountered this idea of like what the pluriverse means in reality, was that
Yeah.
something unexpected for you? Had you, because we say this word pluriversal a lot, it comes up quite a lot in the regenerative dialogue in these ideas.
Mhm.
Was this something that you anticipated? And could you give a little bit more of that kind of concrete idea of what pluriverse kind of means in out in the world?
Yeah. So what that felt like was that before doing this work, the idea of pluriverse was at cognitive level for me. But then while doing it and while I continue to do it even today, that kind of became my reality at the level of my body. So that journey from the head to the heart is something that I would say that happened.
And did you, when you sense that happening, because I've had that feeling myself as before, right? Like where you have this moment where something moves out of simply being a concept to being something that sort of every cell in your body can recognize as a living thing. Did you resist it? Did you go into it easily? Was it how did you welcome or kind of tend to that process of moving from an idea, an intellectual concept, into something that lives in yourself?
That's a beautiful question, and I can answer it in the context of this project. So, there is like whenever, let's say, we enter into a project, there is always a framework to it, right? So, while I was trying to tune into these principles of regeneration within myself and trying to feel what is emerging through my body, my mind would immediately try to make a sense of it in like from the lens of that larger container or larger project that I'm a part of. And that's where the mind would actually come in the middle and interrupt the process. And then my job would be to very gently let it go and to very gently dive deeper into the process and not be bothered by the larger container that I am in.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a really really helpful insight for the practice of working through what it means to let something become embodied. I really value that you just shared that with us. Thank you so much. I'm
Thank you,
going
Melanie.
to no, thank you. I really that's actually making me it's really sitting with me. I want to go to Lua next and ask you the same question. What gift, growth, or transformation did you experience through this process that you'd like to share with this group of people?
So many things that is hard to say. I always think Ashish speaks in a very easy way, like something like this is an easy question or an easy answer. For me, pulling the thread from him, I think that all the process was a process of decolonizing myself and my work processes. And I had to hold a very hard reminder all the time that a person asked on the chat, what is pluriversality? I think that there is a very large path ahead of us to understand, to really embody what pluriversality is, because this linear, mechanical, rational, this world that we know that is all around us, creates and shapes us all the time. And if we are not put it in contact with different perspectives, we take this for granted. Things are like this. But the truth is, when we have a team of researchers that we between ourselves spoke a lot of native different languages that shapes different inner worlds, we start and we are put in contact with a lot of others, hundreds of narratives from all over the world that shapes, designs, and think words differently. We feel in our body this discomfort. It's funny because it's almost like we are pressured all the time by the colonial time, the colonial codes, the colonial rules, the colonial ways of doing research and to produce knowledge. And in the other way, we were put in contact with a lot of beautiful ways of knowing the world and knowing ourselves. And this feels so hard to hold together. Because my sensations in my body is that we are enlarging our capacity to hold all of us together. And during all this process, we had these uncomfortable moments, this hardness, this friction that is so part of what life is. And we pretend that is not in our professional realm, in our professional life, because we have rules that are so settled that says what is appropriate and what is not. So feeling is not appropriating work. We know that. But when we are looking to persistent harmful actions, for an example, we are in a mourning process, us from Global South, for an example. So there is pain. It's inevitable for us. We are not looking, and I think that all of us, we were eager to do that. We didn't know what would happen before, but at the first moment, we were eager to investigate in first person what our people suffered on the past, what were these persistent harmful actions, and how can we speak about it for people to understand when they are repeating these persistent harmful actions. And we saw us practicing this inside of the group in a lot of times. And dealing with this, I think that it takes a lot of preparation, a lot of different state of mind, because it's not about guilty. It's not about, because this is our first movement, right? We accuse, we say this is not right. We put in right and wrong boxes. But what I've learned during this process is that things are complexier than we think, and our body can handle this complexity. But our mind, like Ashish said, all the time is triggering us. So for me, my main learning is this: we need preparation to do this kind of work. It's not easy. It takes more time to put different point of views together. So the linear time is not enough because we go in cycles all the time. So I don't know if I answered, but it's how I feel. I try to not write about my answers.
Yeah, no, I think you really did. And I mean, I think there's a couple of very profound things there that I want to highlight. So that definitely at the end, how you land on that connection to what Ashish said about the body and the mind, right? How the mind will try and force us back into these boxes. But I would like how you, even though you said that this was an enlarging of our capacity and there's this tension and this kind of breaking bit, the body can handle it if we can give it the support and the space and allow it to be part of the process and speak through the process. And I think that that's really important, is that as human beings, if we enlarge our capacity, we can handle this transition, right? We can go into these spaces, we can move between these knowledges, but it does require practice, it requires nurturing, it requires, to your point, moving away from linear time. So I think that that's incredibly important for anyone going into this, understanding that there's a kind of capacities around that we're not traditionally trained for, right?
Yes.
We're not usually, they're not on our CV, they're not, something that you see in an MBA or something like this. That's really important. And we need the space to develop those as well. Thank you. Actually, that was really, really fantastic. And I want to just use that to bridge to Anka and Lindsay, and then we will come back around, because I think there's a lot of things that what you've said there that will be gifts to the audience who've shown up here today as well. So Lindsay, do you want to bring your perspective to this question of what gift did this process bring for you?
Yeah, I think I'd frame it as a transformative gift, sneakily. And I just wanted to say that in the video, I tend to look like a bobblehead on conversations with this group, because I just feel like I constantly learn from these discussions and I'm constantly in awe. But yes, a transformative gift, firstly, for the connections made through this process, which I feel very grateful for, but also to have been involved in an emergent process like this that has worked so hard to create a space where everyone clearly genuinely felt safe, and felt safe to be vulnerable, which I think was really required to produce what came out. And as you said in the outset, Mel, this all began as a state of knowledge report, and it evolved into something completely different. And my role in it did the same thing. I came in initially potentially as an ethnographer. And from the very first conversation that we had, we realized, we recognized with Nua and Lisha, I've always done that, I've always combined your names, Nisha and Lua, that this couldn't be an ethnography, and this position needed to be decolonized, and I needed to come in this as part of the group. And yes, it was a beautiful thing to be a part of because, we started every conversation together, checking in with each other, seeing where we were coming from that day, and coming as our whole selves, which is not something that as you say, I was ever trained to do or had ever experienced. And it enabled us to have conversations that were vulnerable. I constantly heard people and did so myself saying, I feel this right now. I don't know why. It's not a fully formed idea, but building on what you've just said, I think this, and that's what enabled us to go in really interesting directions. And I think that's very rare and very special. But it took a lot of work to create that safe space for us to have those conversations. So I guess in summary, embodiment for me in this process has been the kind of permission to come as my full self and as I am that day, and to recognize that everyone else is doing that too, and to be able to be vulnerable, and to see where we go together. But it was certainly a process that was uncomfortable at times. I'm not going to say it was always easy, as others have alluded to. It was hard. It broke me in many ways, but it enabled me to grow, to see things I'd never understood before. I made mistakes along the way, absolutely, and I hope that those in the group felt I was accountable for those. But we did it together, and yeah, I think that's where I go with that.
Okay, and how do you, I mean, we talk about this a lot, co-creation is hard, this process of understanding what does decolonizing look like and feel like. How do you move away from understanding things purely through a traditional Western rational scientific point of view, which I think is part of your background where you began? How do you feel like, where did you start to go through the hardness to the joy and the beauty of recognizing, to Lua's words, you're an enlarged person now. You have extra richness, you have extra capacity. Like, when did that tip for you?
And I'd say I haven't cracked it. I have so much farther to
Yeah.
go. But yeah,
The
I think
ongoing evolution of this.
absolutely. I think recognizing that that pathway is difficult and that's part of it, and recognizing that there are structural power imbalances, that we just have to intentionally dismantle. It's not the thing I was left with at the end of this process was good intentions are not enough. We have to do so much more than that. We have to actively dismantle these things, and accept the discomfort that that creates. I had to realize that all of my training was very colonial, and from a researcher perspective, in part of this process, recognizing that, who's learning what, this has to be for the benefit of all of us. Who holds the knowledge? Well, we all do. And as someone else said, it takes time, building time into the process so that everyone has a chance to read through it and is comfortable with the knowledge that's coming out and that it's shared in an appropriate way. And, systems weren't built. The ones I was certainly trained in weren't taught us to do these things. And so we have to actively make an effort to do it better.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. And I mean, you and I have worked together a lot over the last sort of decade or so. So it's been really a joy to go on that journey with you. So thank you for being part of this as well. And same to everyone. Anka, I'm going to offer you your reflection to this question now, and then we will move into the next part of the discussion, and then we'll go into questions from the audience. And thank you to the audience for your participation so far. I see you're actively lighting up the chat there and being engaged. So Anka, over to you.
Thank you to the reflection I heard so far. I think it will be important maybe to situate what my role has been in this process. So, as part of a member of Unorthodox, my role was to create space for this anthology to happen in a Western-based organization that understands very clearly its privileges. It understands the power that it holds, but we also understand that we are faced with some limitations. Yes, we are a Swiss-based organization. We are accountable to a board. We are accountable to a Swiss funder. And we often saw in this space something that has been referred by the other panelists, the persistent harmful actions of navigating this space. I am an activist at heart, and I find it very difficult, when I see injustices, not to be able to respond to them immediately. So I know that I have a lot of bruises that people can't see, but for me, this has been a very, very painful process. And I think probably the greatest gift was that it changed my understanding of what it means to steward. I have worked in many co-creation and collaborative processes for many years. But as I said earlier, it asked something different of me. It was not only asking for facilitation, only for coordination or care. It was asking me to examine, where the subtle places in stewardship can become control, where the desire to clarify, the desire to translate or to make things usable, like the output that we are seeing today, are actually narrowing what is trying to emerge from this work. And you can say, that is true of all the co-creation processes, and it is. But it becomes very difficult when every single individual in this co-creating space is going through a transformative process by themselves, because everyone's contours really start to dissolve. And there is a great sense of discomfort, as you've heard it from all of us, and the great need to learn and the need to process what that means for oneself before you catch up, with all the challenges of this process. And I refer to this in a sense the messy middle. Some other authors have referred to it, staying with allowing yourself to stay with the trouble. And there was a request in the chat to really bring, the examples and the learnings. And maybe one concrete example that I can take is the editorial process. There were many moments where my instinct was to ask, how do we make this clearer? How do we make this more accessible? How do we make this piece easier to hold? And then oftentimes, I had to stop, because questions like were coming back and saying, clearer for whom? Easier for whom? What might be lost if we clarify? What might be lost if clarity becomes a demand for coherence too early in the process? Another example was the language. I've heard it many times in this group that language is not neutral. And one of the authors, I hope I remember correctly, Shweta writes that the language does not describe the world. It actually creates and generates the world. And that so many of the languages, many of the language many of us use is shaped by coloniality, as we heard from Luan. So words we often use in institutional spaces, we use stakeholders, we use impact, we use evidence, we use outputs, even regeneration. We had to question them. What worlds are these words actually carrying? What do they make visible? And by using them, what do they erase? And another author in the anthology said something really beautiful that stayed with me. What is regeneration when it is thought and practiced from the soil of different lands, from different bodies? And it reminded me that regeneration cannot be lifted out of place. It cannot be lifted out of body. It cannot be lifted out of memory, out of ancestry, out of the grief and the joy that we carry, and turned into a universal method. It can only be discovered and understood through the relationship. So probably another great gift that this anthology has offered has been the people, the colleagues, the authors, the witness, the team of Unorthodox. I think opened perspective in every single meeting that we had. Someone would offer a story, someone would offer a challenge, someone would offer a moment of silence or a word of wisdom. And suddenly the whole direction would shift, something that we have not expected. And as a steward, as a co-lead, you're put in the position of, okay, how do I sense into this? How do I let this to happen? So there were countless moments of tensions as well, and many moments where we needed repair, moments where we needed to bring an outside person to mediate between these tensions, and to allow for repairs to happen. I felt that there were moments when I was undone by the complexity of it all, and moments when I did not know how to hold the next step. And
That's
what
valid. That's valid. It's valid to say you don't know how to hold the next step.
Yeah, and I think in this moments, someone offered a hand, and not literally, but through care, through perspective, through truth telling, and that to me was regeneration in practice. So maybe to conclude, I would say that my greatest learning is listen differently, not only listening for the synthesis or for the patterns which we are, instinctively learn through the systems thinking theory, but listening of what for what needed to remain distinct through this process, listening for what should not be translated too quickly, listening for what the institution could not immediately metabolize, and allow for that time to happen.
Thank
I
you.
will probably stop there.
Thank you so much, Anka, for being so real about your experiences and so vulnerable. I appreciate that as much as everyone is. What I want to do is continue with you and build on a couple of things you said and go into the next part of the discussion about what kind of gift would you offer the people here from the process that you learned. A lot of what you've just said with me resonates with some of the things we've talked about in the past in unorthodox work about the future of conservation NGOs, how they really need to shift out of dominance. They need to shift out of driving. They need to shift into kind of different roles. And this reframing of stewardship as a really different way of being that does not lean back into colonial methods of control and hierarchy and those sorts of things. Could you elaborate on either that or what you think is the gift that you would offer this audience as a piece of advice, a concrete example, something that they could take into their practice? And are you speaking to someone in specific, or you're speaking in general?
I have many examples.
Let's try for one.
Yeah. We'll try with one, and stop me at any point, Melanie, because I think we can all talk about this forever. But the learning I would offer, and this is linked to the stewardship, is for people inside institutions. So let's say project leads, let's say facilitators that I've seen are here on the call, let's say funders, researchers, or anyone who's actually trying to steward the co-creative work with care. And I think researchers or anyone trying to hold this space, I would say to them, do not invite plurality into a container that has not itself been transformed. it is not enough to invite different voices into the room. The room itself has a shape. It has a pace, it has a language, it has a hierarchy, it has a budget, it has a timeline. It has an idea of what counts as evidence and often an expectation of what the final output should look like. Many of you who work in the co-creative process would say, okay, this is not new knowledge. And to that, I would say yes, but I would also ask, do we truly dedicate the time as institutions and as people who steward these processes to examine these things? Because if we don't, then we might invite plurality in, but still ask it to behave according to the institutional rules. So one practical example or lesson for me is to make this container honest from the beginning. I would now always ask myself, what is fixed when I invite plurality? What is flexible? What is genuinely emergent? What has already been decided? What can still be shaped and with whom? And who gets to decide what happens if there is disagreement? What kinds of knowledge and expressions are welcome, and are we able to hold those forms of expression? I have many more examples that I can take, practical ones, but I'm happy to stop here to create space.
Thank you, Anka. And I think that that's very eloquent way of putting it. So actually what I want to do is then go back to Lua. I want to offer you this same question as well. So what gift would you offer as a piece of advice, a practical experience, an example for this room around this idea? And you can build on what you began with around this enlargement of capacity, this decolonization of yourself, or you could move into something else that you heard in the conversation. That's okay. And same as Anka, are you thinking of a particular audience, a particular kind of person when you offer this gift? Like who would this sit the most with, do you think?
I will react to Anka's. I will create tension. That is what I do best. That's my specialty. I think that plurality is everywhere, but people respond to their own capacity of hold their plurality in different ways. So if we look to this room, there are here completely different people from completely different races, from completely different backgrounds. So plurality doesn't need invitation. What we need to do is the work that we need to do. And the work that we need to do is what we are doing here, is what we did on this past almost 2 years. So I think that there is some kind of privilege in this idea that plurality is outside. But the thing that I see is that not acknowledging the presence of that plurality in our territories, in ourselves, in our organizations, and etc. What this is just allowed for power dynamics. So there are power dynamics that are established and controlling and creating rules and containers for things that to stay the same way that were before. I think that what we did together is we created this tension and we enlarged ourselves in this process to hold this capacity. And this capacity asks for discomfort. So for me, I think that what I offer to the people that are in the room is, I think that what Anka did was this process to gain clarity. She named it. What are the rules? What are fixed? What is the space that we have? And to prepare the invitation in a more conscious and honest way. Because when I hear her, what I hear is, when we not prepare the soil, sometimes the soil is violent to the seed. When I hear her, this is the image that comes to me. So I think yes, but for us, there are on the other sides of the established world, we live this power dynamics every day. So, for an example, each organization which I have a relationship with carries different degrees of openness, different degrees of capacity to hold this plurality, the difference, and etc. So for me, it's less a box, yes, no, plurality, not plurality, is more our capacity to hold the difference, because the difference is everywhere. And if we can't see that people think differently around us, is because the power is completely set on the room. Because even when you talk about European people, white people, you have your own indigeneity. So if we don't see that plurality, it's because this is erased and we need to work on the remembrancy. So I think that this is one point that I think that is one present. And the second and short one is the codes, the language, and the rules that we have hold this old world. So tension that, and to look twice to our rules, to our governance, to the processes of our projects is very important. And always leave a door open for people to question, to bring their intelligence, to bring their own process, because I'm pretty sure that all of us here, we left this project better, with more resources, with more intelligence, with more wisdom, with more tools to do our work. So, yes.
Yeah, thank you. I actually was going to ask you, but you answered already with your statement of leave a door open, right? Like it's not shameful to say this is where we are. This is where we begin. This is what we believe is how we can create this container. But I like your phrasing of how you can leave a door open for as you begin to be in relationship with each other. Where can that be nudged? Where can that be challenged? Where can these multiple ways of existing in the world break the container a little bit, or paint it a different color, or actually say, we're going to go sit in a different container together? I really, really appreciate it. So actually that was going to be my next question of how do you introduce the flexibility and the learning and the growth, that if the seed has not been damaged by the soil, where it might have a chance to come through the soil. So thank you so much. I really also appreciated, and something that I've been reflecting on as well, is this idea that actually colonization and all these kind of things have erased a lot of the differences within white cultures as well themselves. And I think that is part of something that shouldn't then be enacted on others, right? You know, it's also a process for people from privileged backgrounds, from the global minority, to go on their own exploration and bring that into this process as well. So thank you for acknowledging that. I really appreciate that. I would love to then link back to Ashish and ask him the same kind of question. What would you like to offer as your gift from this process to this room, to this audience? You can build on what Lua has said, connect to it, anything, or build on your earlier examples, something practical. And who are you speaking to, if you have someone or a particular kind of audience in mind?
Okay, thanks, Melanie. So I want to build something on what Lua said about plurality, while she was mostly talking about the institutions and the world out there. I was trying to look at plurality, like how that kind of happens inside us. And yes, so like there are many meditation practices that kind of invite us to look at the body sensations. And then it often happens that Sometimes we are able to exactly name the sensation that we are feeling, and many times we are not able to name them. But there are tons and tons of sensations always happening at every part of our body. And what the mind does is like, mind basically tries to contain it, to tries to label it, mind tries to kind of explain it. And in that process of mind trying to make sense of it, it kind of simplifies the process. And that simplistic framework that it creates kind of ends up killing the plurality. And then we go where the institutions actually end up. It's like in the process of institutionalizing, we have to put up some governance, some systems, some structures, and our governance system structures, processes cannot, because they come from the space of the mind, the cognition, they cannot go beyond that understanding, beyond that worldview, and hence we get stuck. It's like we are only able to contain as much plurality as much our mind has experienced it, and is able to kind of tag it. So I was basically trying to look inside of myself while I was listening to Lua.
Thank you.
Um,
Continue.
Now talking about the gift, I want to come back to what I started sharing like in the beginning. And it has been a pursuit for me for many years now. It's like whatever work I do, and I'm speaking to everybody with respect to this. Whatever work I do, I try to keep a very close eye on how is that work shaping me inside, like what is happening inside of me while I am doing the work outside. Um, one one important insight and kind of a method that I found for myself in the past couple of months is to also find an expression for whatever is happening inside. If I can find an expression for that in the form of writing about it or in the form of painting, then what happens is like there are some raw sensations and emotions that are moving inside while I'm doing the work. And if I choose to pen them down or paint them out, then I am creating space for more to happen inside me. And when that more happens inside me, I kind of become new every day while the project is also going on. So in my pursuit in the field of organization transformation, my idea is to actually bring the spirit of inner work while we do our professional work. It's like, why should sadhana happen on the weekends? Or why do we need to take holidays or go on a retreat while we actually do not like coming at work on Monday? It's like, why cannot sadhana happen on Monday while we are coming to work? And uh, for me, from my point of view, that can happen the best when we are using our work as a medium for inner growth. So
Yeah.
that's something that I would like to share.
Yeah, I find that really powerful, right? Like the thing that you're describing is not something that's done on the side. It is the work, right? It is
Yeah.
the experience of showing up daily doing this thing. And I like the way you've expressed it, deliberately noticing what's happening, making the space for that, and allowing it some kind of expression. It reminds me of this information that I learned recently that when you cry, the composition of tears that are from anger, happiness, sadness are fundamentally different than if you cry tears from simply cutting an onion, which is just water and salt.
Absolutely.
Whereas
Exactly.
real tears are an external expression of your hormones, your mood, everything being processed through your body. And what you're describing is another way that we can take that embodied expression and allow it to flow through us rather than be held or be contained or become toxic or become contraction or something, but it allows for expansion. And how do we build that into our daily work, or how do we understand that as the work to be done?
I can share more about it, like with respect to how I am. I mean, it's a risky experiment, but then I've chosen to do it on social media. So the experiment is that on LinkedIn. So by the way, like because of me living in, because living in a rural community for more than a decade, I kind of stayed away from social media for for 8 to 10 years. And then I came back 3 years back on LinkedIn. And then since then, there have been times when I thought that I want to build my presence over there, and I would create some posts for like um, 3 or 4 consecutive weeks or days, and then I would discontinue. So then one day I kind of sat down and I reflected that why is it happening that I'm not able to kind of continue my commitment here on LinkedIn. And then I realized that it's kind of a burden, it's a pressure, and I don't want to perform. So then I flipped that experiment, and I now I'm doing it differently and I'm enjoying it. And that experiment for me now is like um, whatever I post on LinkedIn, that is kind of an expression of what is moving inside me. It is a very raw expression. I write it as and when I feel like there is something happening inside and I want to write it. And then I kind of filter it to, because it is going on social media, so I have to filter a little bit of my personal life. And then I simply share it out. When I do it this way, that sharing itself is completes the cycle for me. Then, if it resonates with people, that's a bonus. That's not something that I'm looking forward to. And in that way, it's like uh, LinkedIn is becoming a part of my inner work. It's no longer um, something that I have to do to gain more clients, for example, professionally. It's like
Yeah.
let the clients take care of themselves. It's like, how can I use my work for my own growth? That's
Yeah.
that's the
It's
point I'm
not
trying to communicate.
it's not an instrument to manipulate the world in some way. It's an
Yeah.
expression that allows you a completeness of yourself. That's a fantastic way to reframe LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing that. And I really like that, because for LinkedIn, for a long time, for me, I felt it's been very performative in many, many ways. And you get that sense now, particularly with the uptake of
Mm,
AI. But what you're describing is taking that
yeah.
platform back as a tool and using it for yourself in an authentic way. Thank you so much. Lindsay, I'm going to offer you the last reflection on this thing, and then we have a lot of questions, guys. So I don't think we'll be able to get to them in the last half an hour, but we will try and get to a few of them, and they're very strong, like very, very rich questions. So let's see how we can go. So Lindsay, what gift would you like to offer the audience? And thank you to everyone who's staying so far. I've noticed we've had really, really good engagement in the chat.
Thanks, Mel. I'm going to be intentionally brief because I think they're interesting questions. But just love what everyone else has shared. And as Ashish, you were speaking, I was thinking when you're talking about bringing your whole self to work on a Monday, not just on the weekend, that's very much what I felt in this process. And that relates to me at what you were saying as well about, not letting our minds run what happens, but our instincts, our hearts, or what we're feeling. And I've tried to do this much more since I've been involved in this project. And it's just more authentic. It's easier. Like you say, it brings joy to things. It doesn't need to be polished. And it's just been a much more rewarding way I had a lot I would love to say to the process of being a witness, and trying to do bridging work, but I think we should go to the questions instead.
Although I do want to quickly pick up, what do you think why do you use this word witness? What is the significance of this to you? And given that you do work in the social sciences field, what would you say to other people who try to work in this action research space, the anthropology space, this social science space? Like why is that word important to you?
To be honest, I'm not even sure it's the perfect word, because witness is still quite inactive, and we very much tried for me to be a part of it. I wasn't just witnessing it from outside; I was within it. So maybe it's not the right word still. But as opposed to ethnographer, I was very much trying to bring together, understand and bring together the various different perspectives. So the pluriverse that existed within this project, and helping to where I could, and sometimes I couldn't, but because I had the privilege of being in different rooms and different conversations, sometimes I could see that there were misunderstandings happening, and encouraging those people to talk directly to, because they could be avoided, or we talked a lot about language and how difficult it is to capture things, as particularly when people are coming from places where English isn't their first language. So yeah, I think for me, witness, maybe not the perfect word, and a very central part of the work I was doing was trying to help to bridge the different groups involved in the work itself.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to lean now into the questions that we have. These are we could spend days together on these questions, I think. And what I would really encourage everyone who's here today, please, if possible, see if you can reach out to other resources or the panelists or dig into this and find a way to be in contact if you want longer discussion. I'm going to begin with a question here. I probably will get through two, I think, in the next 20 minutes, maybe. I'm really, really torn about where to begin. I'll be honest with you, because we've let this conversation be so rich and so organic and so flowing, and I think it's gone in so many great directions. So let me begin with a question from Amy. I'm hearing how much emotional safety the team was able to create for each other to be their full selves, to be messy, and to be vulnerable. How was this intentionally built from the start? I would say if it was intentionally built from the start, and what do people reflect on how that kind of evolved in the process, or where that got to, about what do people think about emotional safety in the process? So anyone can jump in, and you don't have to answer all the questions. If you don't want to answer a question, you don't have to as well.
Okay, I can jump in that. I think that me and Isha, we had this pluriverse when we designed the vision of the project, me and her. Since from the beginning, we had this vision of pluriverse on the center of the work. So what we did when we designed the meetings and the structure, the initial structure, was how we open space. How can we open space for the people to bring their own selves, their own knowledge, and bring not just their background, professional background, but their territory, their presences, and etc. So I think this intention was very important. But during the process, I think that we saw different perspectives about what safety is. For an example, here, we feel safety in different ways. So I would rephrase that. I think what we built was a courage space, not a safe space, because it was not safe.
A courage space.
Yes, a courage space.
Yeah.
Because it was not safe in a lot of moments, because our more deep identity values were questioned by the learnings, by our relationships, by what we learned. So I don't think the world is safe. So I think the safety space it's a very privileged concept. So I think what we did, we try to be present with our whole selves, and this is beyond me and Nisha. I think that Anka is a great example. She was present, feeling and being with us all the time, like she's here. And this is very important for somebody that leads a project. Ashish, Lindsay, we all suffered in a lot of moments. So I would rephrase for a courage space, not safety, because safety, it relates to this idea that things are nice and I'm completely okay with everything and with everything that is said. And this is not the truth.
Okay, thank you so much, Lua. Would anyone like to build on that, or Ashish?
Yeah, I would like to. So for me, I remember that I entered the project a few months late, and then I was mostly engaging with Nisha and Lua in the beginning. And what I chose to do was to kind of, let's say, I mean, I can use the word invest in the relational fabric outside the scope of the project. And when I did that, that kind of created a possibility for me to share my emotional vulnerability and insecurities with them. And that I would call, if we choose to use the word emotional safety, then for me, that built it.
Yeah. And so you had to do a bit more work outside the process to bring that into the process. Okay. Thank you.
And
Um,
yeah, I also want to say, like, sorry, I mean, phrasing it like I had to do this work would, I wouldn't like to phrase it like that. I would like to phrase it
yeah,
like I chose to do this work
you choose to do the work.
because I choose to do it in all of my projects, which is basically building the relational fabric. If that is already built into the process of the project, that's great. If not, then doing it outside of that. Yeah, sorry for that. Yeah.
No, thank you. Thank you for correcting my interpretation of what you said. I really appreciate it, and that I think that nuance is important. Okay. So I'm bearing in mind time. We've like these questions are just so fantastic. I wish we could just sit here for another hour together. I'm going to go into a deep one, and then I want to end. I mean, they're all deep, but I'm going to go into a relatively deeper one, and then I want to end on a question about specifically the anthology as an output itself. Okay. So there's a question here from Paulina. How does holding plurality relate to dismantling white supremacy? And what is that kind of relationship? This is a very big question. So I don't think we can do it justice in a couple of minutes. But if anyone wanted to add or felt safe enough or comfortable enough to add a reflection on this.
Can you repeat the
Well,
question, Melanie, please, just for me?
how does holding plurality relate to dismantling white supremacy? I mean, even if it's a good question that you've never thought about, that I think that's a sufficient answer right now. It's something that I think in nature conservation we have always skirted around this idea of race and the relationship between race and power and construction and those sorts of things. We say a lot of words like colonization and hierarchy, but it's not dived deep into. So if we don't have the time for that now, I just welcome any reactions and we can move on to the next one as well.
I can attempt. All right.
Yeah.
So for me, white supremacy would mean it's like anybody on the skin who is white. For me, that person is not the only white. I am also white because in my mind, the worldviews that I am indoctrinated with through my education, they make me white. And when we have these dominant worldviews, like, for example, neoliberalism, the economic systems that we have, when we are deeply conditioned by them, and when we feel that these worldviews are like this particular worldview, neoliberalism, is the only worldview that can actually save the planet and save all of us, like humanity, then that is something which is deeply destructive. Like, for example, I do work with a lot of social leaders here in India, and my job is to connect funders with the fellows. The fellows are working on the field with different communities, and funders are the one who supposedly have made money by participating in the capitalistic system. So a lot of funders actually come up with this worldview, and in their worldview, many communities who do not have resources are poor. But when I actually visit those communities and interact with the human beings over there, their worldview is entirely different. And according to their worldview, the people with money could also be poor. So, I'm just highlighting one dimension of it, but then there is a whole plurality out there. And for me, like when we are talking about plurality, we are actually talking about dismantling that kind of white supremacy, which actually adheres to just one worldview for the entire planet.
Oh, thank you. That was really, really thoughtful, Ashish. Um,
I
yeah, I'm
can
gonna.
go too a little bit.
Go, Lua, build on. I'm thinking about it as well, but please, Lua, go and build on this, and then Anka and Lindsay, if you want to contribute, and then I'd like to move to the last question.
Yeah, I think answering the question, yes, but it's not the whole answer for this question to dismantle white supremacy. But of course, when we have pluriverse ways of seeing, being the world, it's almost automatic that we create that tension that is necessary for us to acknowledge something is wrong, to embody the power dynamics, because the plurality is the presence of these different worldviews that create this fabric of life. So when we are in the room together, and we have this table to sit together, the problem is that is not the whole answer, because a lot of spaces, like what happened after Trump became the power, is that the doors that were open for for diversity and pluriverse world were closed, because exactly because we create tension on power. So fascists, they don't want to see this tension, they take this outside. So my answer is yes, in part.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, this could be a very, very long, rich conversation. Lindsay, Anka, do you want to add, or we will move to the...
Maybe just briefly, if you don't mind me going first, Anka, to say, I think we cycled through this continuously in this process in our conversations of, for me, holding plurality means sometimes downplaying the louder voices and the louder perspectives so that there's space for others. And that to me relates to white supremacy. So that's my very quick answer, but I would love to discuss it for another hour.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. I know it was a tricky one, but I didn't want to keep it out of the room. I think it's an important part of the conversation. Anka, any thoughts, or we will move on to the last one about the anthology itself?
Maybe super briefly to say +1 to everything that I heard, and building on the last point is that I think holding plurality is one practice of dismantling white supremacy when it redistributes attention, authority, pace, trust to the point that Lindsay was making, and to the point that I was making earlier. And this can only happen if the container changes too in how we do that. Otherwise, you invite plurality and then it gets disciplined into the same dominant frame of things. So in the anthology, this showed up very concretely. We had to ask ourselves, are we only inviting different voices, or are we actually changing the condition under which these voices are received? Are we still asking people to translate themselves into institutional, Western, academic, in the spaces that we most feel comfortable with, to express ourselves? Or are we actually taking things seriously? Are we treating, ancestral, embodied, artistic, place-based, more than human knowledge as equally valid, or only, as beautiful additions to the real knowledge? So I think this is important.
Thank you, Anka. And I think so then I think that links us into this question about how can people actually use the anthology itself. Through the process of the anthology, I was there, and I had my beautiful second daughter. I went and had a child, and I came back and hooked back into this process. And for us at Unorthodox, going through this learning, and I did it a little bit at arm's length, was actually saying, as a conservation organization, we stand by the publishing of this thing, to Anka's point, that takes serious this other way of describing regeneration, this other way of illustrating it, this beginning with these stories from the more than human point of view, with these different kinds of community stories, and signaling that we stand with this way. And it's a departure from other things we had done in the past in terms of state of the knowledge, landscape analysis, those sorts of things. And maybe it is in an imperfect departure, but it is in a departure that signals we want to be in to this thing as a way that we can be. And so there's a question here about how could people who are not familiar with the topics we're speaking about today actually use the anthology of regeneration to implement these insights in their everyday life. So you can pick one, you can pick two if you have an example, and then we will see how we can wrap this up. So does anyone have anything that comes to mind about how, I found the anthology hugely practical as a leader. And I'd love to have a conversation about that with anyone who wants to have a conversation about that another day. But does anyone have any practical, like, how would you take the anthology and use it in your daily life for the people here? Lindsay, go for it.
Not read it from the very start until the very end. Because it's not linear, and I think you guys have done a great job of putting it into the world in a way that you can dip into it from different angles, with different things in mind. And that was obviously very intentional and difficult to do because we live in structures that force us into linearity. But yeah, it's not meant to be read from start to finish. So whatever bit is speaking to you most, start there.
Begin where it makes sense to you, right? Yeah. And sometimes it's not the beginning.
Yeah,
Lua.
I would suggest to start with our starting point question. What is regeneration for you? Because what we discovered during this process that we all are expressions of regeneration, but regeneration expresses itself in different ways, in different territories, in different communities, in different relationships. So I think that looking for this answer inside of us, how can you express regeneration in your daily basis? And this in the inner work that Ashish mentioned, in a community work, in an art work, in a philosophical work, in an academic work, doesn't matter. And life needs all these expressions in all these places. We are all tools of it. So for me, always helps me to think why I am doing this work.
Thank you, Lua. So if anyone wanted to take that question, write it out and stick it on their whiteboard in the most kind of practical way, that might be helpful.
I would
Ashish,
like to, yeah, I would like to add to this. Um, Please do not read the entire anthology in one go. That's not going to become a part of your life then. It's like invite these communities and the case studies like one at a time to become a part of your life. It's like take a whole year to read the anthology, but slowly and steadily and multiple times probably connect to the case studies that you feel closest towards and allow them to pass through you. And once that happens, you will be transformed by the end of it.
thank you, Ashish. Uh, anyone else? Anka, do you want to recommend?
Oh, that was so beautiful from Ashish. I would say maybe in a way that it helped me. I used it as a mirror to notice my own assumption and to understand what do I consider as being valid knowledge. Where do I rush to provide solutions and what do I dismiss? And I think it's really, really important if you're able to hold those questions in your mind. And I would say, in another practical way, use it as a conversation starter. Take a short section from the anthology, go to a colleague, a friend, your husband, your wife, your child, um, and discuss what does regeneration look like where you are. You know, whether you're in an urban environment, an academic environment, wherever you are, and not use it as an abstract concept, but really in our homes, in our gardens, with our neighbors. We've produced a very beautiful piece called the Voices of Regeneration, which is an artistic expression of regeneration. And alongside the anthology, it has been one of the offerings that I gave to my friends. And it's been so nice to see, you know, what resonated with people and what opened the conversation to engage in discussions about regeneration. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Anka. And I can fully vouch, although to your point, Ashish, I did actually read it from start to finish because that's part of my job. But what it gave to me was just a set of questions as lenses over my daily choices. You know, it made me rethink or reframe something about design or leadership or being or those sorts of things, and how those questions, when you begin to notice them regularly, for me, a lot of what I took out of the anthology helped to settle my nervous system down. It returned me to a kind of human way of seeing the world, as opposed to an industrial capitalist way of seeing the world. So I would recommend for anyone here who hasn't yet attended to the anthology, please do. It's available online. Thank you so much to our panel. I know there were a couple of other anthology authors in the audience today as well, so thank you for coming along. And thank you to the Bloom for hosting us, to the Unorthodox team, to the Bloom team. Any final closing words from the panel that you want to leave people with? And thank you, one, for your spontaneity, your honesty, your vulnerability, and for being in flow with each other today. So any final comments, and then I will hand over to the Bloom to close us out for the day.
Thank you. That's my last question for all of you, Anka, Melanie, and all the Unorthodox team, the researchers, authors that were together in this long way. And thank you, Lindsay, to be our witness in part of the time and to be part of us too.
Thank you. Lindsay, you're unmuted, and then I'll go Anka, and then I'll go. I mean, Ashish, you don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
Also, thanks, and let's find a way to keep these conversations going because they're so important.
And from my side, I really want to thank and name the people here in the room. I want to say thank you, Christina Chaminade, for being here. Thank you, Oshanan, for being here. These are two of the other authors of the anthology. Thank you, Fabio. Thank you, Sudha. Thank you, Maya. And a big thank you to Anaik, who has been amazing in pulling this team together and one of the pillars of the anthology as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to especially thank Anaik, because while Anka was talking about her, I got reminded that how she was right from the beginning taking up a lot of coordination work, and kind of when we were kind of holding tensions as a group, and when we were like having a lot of discussions, Anaik was the one who was kind of weaving the thread together. So thanks so much for that, Anaik.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you so much. Okay, I would like to hand over to our colleagues at the Bloom for wrapping up and closing the event. Thank you to everyone who stayed with us for the duration. I see we've had a few departures in the last minutes, but mostly we've been together in this space for the whole time.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Melanie, for holding this space and the conversation with everyone. And of course, thank you, Lindsay, Ashish, Lua, and Anka for the contribution. It has been great for me personally to hear all of you and to be a part of this sessions with Unorthodox. So thank you for trusting the Bloom to host these sessions for you. And I hope to see you in other in future opportunities. And thank you so much for all your work and contribution, and yeah, and for being in the world. It's great to be part of the world together with you. Thank you,
Great.
everyone, for being here. I've been sharing the feedback form. If you can share your thoughts, and even if it's good words, or if you want to share suggestions to make things better, thank you for your contributions.
Great, thank you. And everyone can find the anthology itself online and a bunch of other materials and publications out there. So please do look it up, but we will also be able to share it. Okay, thank you so much. And I wish you all peaceful, grounded, energetic, happy rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.